Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So we are now a few years removed from the last round of stimulus checks that were sent out. But is it at all possible for one more round to be sent out just before the election? We're going to be going over the chances and if there's any talk around that. Plus, Social Security is currently in a crisis, and just 10 years from now, if nothing is done about it, there could be some pretty massive cuts to the program. We're going to be covering one article by one author who believes that he may have the perfect solution to keep the trust fund solvent for a longer period of time, and perhaps even come with an increase for all beneficiaries across the board. But before we go ahead and dive into the main content of today's video, if you wouldn't mind helping me out real quickly by just giving this video a like, that just helps out with the good old YouTube algorithm, and also consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already. Plus, if you would like to receive up to $200 in free stocks or $200 in free cash, in a pinned comment below, I will be leaving a link to Robinhood. All you have to do is once you click on that link, is just sign up for a free account and then link your bank account. You don't even have to make a deposit. At that point, once you do link your bank account, Robinhood will be sending you one free stock worth all the way up to $200. And if you'd rather just have the cash, all you have to do is once you receive that free stock, is just sell it for what it's worth and then transfer the cash value right back to your bank account. Okay, so diving right into our first story of today's video, Social Security. It's currently in a crisis just 10 years from now. If nothing is done about the program, if Congress doesn't pass some type of Social Security reform where we're able to take more money into the trust fund or send less money out, there is going to be a cut in benefits across the board. How much it is, nobody quite knows. It's going to be anywhere between 18 to 26%, which is obviously going to be very, very substantial. We cannot have cuts that large. We're not going to be able to afford it. But according to CNN here, just this recent article, Social Security will not be able to pay full benefits in 2035 if Congress doesn't act. Medicare has a little more time. So according to CNN, Social Security and Medicare will not be able to fully pay benefits in just over a decade if lawmakers don't act to address the pending shortfalls, according to reports released on Monday by the entitlement program's trustees. While the trust fund's finances improved slightly, they remain in dire shape. The combined Social Security trust funds, which help support monthly payments to the elderly, survivors, and people with disabilities, are expected to be exhausted in 2035, 1 year later than previously forecasted, according to its trustees' annual report. After that, payroll tax revenues and other income sources will only be able to cover 83% of benefits owed. Meanwhile, Medicare's financial condition is improved more. It is expected to be able to cover scheduled inpatient hospital benefits until 2036, 5 years later than last year's projection, according to its trustees. So even though it is doing a little bit better, still, we're really not that far away from these massive cuts taking place. And we've seen so far that Republicans and Democrats do not agree on what they should be doing for Social Security reform, and until they agree on something, there's not going to be much of a chance of passing anything at all, and chances are they're just going to continue to kick this can down the road until the final very months, perhaps even minutes before the trust fund goes insolvent. We have these massive cuts before they ever get anything done, just like they did back in the 1980s. Now, one author believes that he may actually have the perfect solution, even though at this point in time it might be a little bit too late, but he believes that we should be doing something better with the money that's flowing into the trust funds. And if we did this, we would have much better returns and we would not have to have these massive cuts taking place. And really, if anything, we could actually be giving out increases to people receiving Social Security benefits. So we're going to be covering this article here real quickly by MarketWatch. He says it's an opinion article. It says this chart shows why Social Security is in crisis. So he says that the surprising thing about the Social Security Trust Fund isn't that it's scheduled to run out of money in 2035, it's that it has any money left at all. Social Security is the most important pension account in America by many orders of magnitude, yet Uncle Sam invests the money like grandma, then spends the money like a sailor on shore leave. You don't need a degree in math to work out why it's in trouble. He says to see how we got here, take a look at the chart above. We are going to be showing that chart in just a moment. It shows how a $1,000 invested 40 years ago has fared in the Social Security Trust Fund, and how it would have fared if it had been if it had been invested instead in a normal pension fund using a quote balanced portfolio of 60% US stocks and 40% US bonds. The difference is staggering, isn't it? The Social Security money has just been blown. And by the way, you can't blame these Social Security trustees for this. They have to follow rules laid down by Congress. And you can see here, the green line is if they went with the 60-40 pension fund, whereas that red line is how they do it right now. And you can see that red line is barely growing at all. Sure, it is growing, but it's not growing nearly as much as what the green line is. And sure, the green line investing into like stocks and more like riskier things, you can see the green line actually goes down at times, but it recovers, it always recovers, and it's up substantially more than the red line. So it really only makes sense to have, a mix of how you invest these Social Security funds. And we actually have, there's actually like a bipartisan group led by Bill Cassidy and Angus King, the independent in Maine. And they're trying to work out a strategy where they, adjust the way that we have these funds invested, where we would actually have $1 trillion separate from the Social Security Trust Fund, and we'd be investing in that fund, and then later down the road, shuttling that money into the trust fund. But something clearly needs to be done here. And the article goes on to say that the reason for this disastrous performance is no great mystery. All of Social Security's money, all of it, is invested in U.S. Treasury bonds. As everybody knows, those produce returns that are steady but very low. How stupid is this? Here's a simple illustration. Next time somebody tries to defend this moronic policy, just ask them how they invest their own retirement savings. So again, leave your thoughts and comments below. Do you believe that we should be using or investing this money that's in the trust fund in stocks, real estate, and other things like that, hoping for better returns than we are just having it like in U.S. Treasuries and barely getting anything back in return? Now, into our last story of today's video. Like I mentioned earlier on, it's been a few years since we've received our last round of stimulus checks. Many Americans have sort of given up on the chance or the, even thinking about receiving another one. And while some states have continued to send some out on a very narrow basis, it's really not been talked about that much on a federal level. But we are going to be examining here real quickly whether or not there's actually a chance whatsoever for there to be one final check sent out. And what better way for Biden to get reelected than to send out a check to every single American right before the election. So we're going to be looking at this article here by Go Banking Rates. Will there be stimulus checks in 2024? So they say that now with the pandemic largely in hindsight, the economy has significantly improved, but that doesn't mean Americans aren't still feeling the impact of all that it has damaged. Last March, Business Insider reported that the liquid assets of the lower 80% of American households based on income were below where they were in March of 2020 when COVID-19 struck the U.S. Inflation, which spiked during the pandemic, continues to hang over our heads and wallets. And basically, the short answer here, whether or not there's going to be a chance of another stimulus check, is that the Anthony Burke, the IRS spokesman, said we paid out of all the economic impact payments. And clearly, this probably isn't the answer we were looking for. So that's pretty much the short answer, is the IRS is now saying there's not going to be any more stimulus checks. And of course, if there is going to be one, it does have to be passed by Congress first and then signed by Joe Biden into law. And really, for Congress to even, consider this idea of another stimulus check, first of all, we're definitely going to have to see the inflation rate go down to 2% or perhaps even lower, and then we're going to have to see the economy get substantially worse. We've seen the unemployment rate increase a little bit. We're seeing people take on second and third jobs. So a lot of the new jobs that we are adding to the economy aren't in fact full-time productive jobs. They're just people picking up part-time jobs. So this isn't necessarily a plus to the economy. So if we see the unemployment rate spike up, if we see the household debt continue to increase, and we see the inflation rate continue to decrease, and perhaps at some point we dive into a recession, it's very possible that another stimulus check could be on the table. Whether or not that could actually happen before the November elections, I don't think really that's a clear possibility at this point in time, and I don't think Republicans strategically would join in with Democrats to pass a fourth stimulus check that would have Joe Biden's name on it right before the 2024 election. But perhaps if we have a life-changing, a world-changing event like we did back in March of 2020, just before the elections, then at that point, it's a real possibility. But if I'm going to go out on a limb, my personal prediction is that no, there's probably not going to be a fourth stimulus check in 2025. It is a possibility that if we do go into recession, we could perhaps use that method, a stimulus check, to try to jumpstart the economy once again. But we will have to see how things play out over the next few months. Now, of course, like I mentioned, there are some states that are going to continue sending out targeted stimulus checks, and Alaska is one state that every single year they send out a dividend. So according to Marca, $1,312 stimulus checks. Who will get this tax rebate payment next week? So they say that residents of Alaska are eagerly awaiting arrival of their next stimulus check, set to be distributed in less than 15 days. If you're already qualified for this year's dividend payment, mark May 16th on your calendar, as the state of Alaska will be distributing the final payments for this year on that date. These stimulus payments are a result of the state's oil earnings, providing Alaskans with a guaranteed annual cash stream. So if you do live in the state of Alaska, you will be receiving these payments. But as far as the federal level goes, once again, we're just going to have to wait and see how the economy plays out, and then whether or not Congress decides to pass one more bill with another stimulus check included. But that's all we have for today's video. I certainly hope you enjoyed and found value out of it. If you did, again, I would greatly appreciate if you could give this video a like. Consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already, and I will see you in the next video.